The rescue in silver rain. The cargo shuttle screamed through Valora's atmosphere like a dying star, alarms shrieking in harmony with the wind. Cale Brennan fought the controls with bleeding knuckles, cursing the faulty navigation system that had led him straight into the moon's legendary storm belt. Through the viewport, he glimpsed nothing but roiling clouds the color of bruised plums and lightning that danced in sheets across the sky. The impact came without warning. Metal shrieked, the world tumbled, and then darkness. When consciousness returned, it brought pain. Cale groaned, tasting copper and smoke. His left arm hung at an odd angle, and something warm trickled down his temple. The shuttle had embedded itself in a rocky outcropping, its hull split like overripe fruit. Through the crack, he could hear it, the hiss of Valora's infamous acidic rain beginning to fall. He had maybe 10 minutes before the precipitation ate through what remained of the shuttle's protective plating. Cale dragged himself toward the breach, each movement sending white-hot agony through his ribs. Outside, the landscape glowed with an otherworldly beauty, crystalline formations jutting from silver stone, all of it now being pelted by rain that steamed and sizzled where it struck. He wouldn't survive 5 minutes in that downpour. Then he saw her. She moved through the rain as if it couldn't touch her, though Cale noticed how she kept her hood drawn close. When she reached the shuttle's opening, she paused, and he caught his first glimpse of her face beneath the protective fabric. Silver. Her skin gleamed like polished mercury in the storm's strange light, and across her cheeks and forehead, delicate patterns that resembled star charts pulsed with a soft blue radiance. Her eyes met his, large, luminous, and filled with what looked like surprise. "You're hurt," she said, her voice carrying an unusual resonance, like wind chimes in a distant room. Her words were heavily accented but understandable through his translator implant. "The rain," Cale managed through gritted teeth. "I can't." She didn't wait for him to finish. Dropping to her knees beside him, she produced a length of treated fabric from her pack and began wrapping it around him with practiced efficiency. The material shimmered slightly, repelling the acidic drops that splashed toward them. "My home is close," she said, supporting his weight as she helped him stand. "We must hurry before the deep rains come." Cale had no choice but to trust her. Together, they stumbled across the treacherous terrain, her arm around his waist, guiding him between the crystal formations. The rain grew heavier, its hiss becoming a roar. Through his pain-fogged vision, he saw her wince as drops found gaps in her covering, saw small burns appear on the silver skin of her hands. She was suffering to save him. "Almost there," she murmured, and he realized he could feel her determination like a physical thing, steadying him. They reached a cliff face just as his legs gave out. Nithara, he didn't yet know her name, caught him, then dragged him toward what appeared to be solid rock. Her hand pressed against a specific crystal formation, and the stone shimmered, revealing a hidden entrance. Inside, the world became quiet. The sound of the storm faded to a distant murmur. Cale collapsed onto smooth, cool stone, his vision swimming. He was dimly aware of her removing the protective wrapping, of gentle hands assessing his injuries, of something cool and soothing being applied to his wounds. "Rest now," she whispered, and those constellation marks on her skin pulsed brighter, almost anxious. "You're safe here." As consciousness slipped away again, Cale's last thought was wonder at the kindness in her luminous eyes, this stranger who had risked herself to save someone from another world at you. The moment everything changed. Cale woke to softness and the gentle sound of water trickling somewhere nearby. His body still ached, but the sharp edges of pain had dulled to manageable throbs. He lay on a pallet of woven fiber that seemed to cradle him perfectly, and overhead, the ceiling of the dwelling sparkled with embedded crystals that cast dancing reflections across smooth stone walls. "You're awake." Her voice drew his attention, and Cale turned his head to find her sitting nearby, those constellation patterns on her skin glowing softly in the dim light. "You saved my life," he said, his voice rough. "I don't even know your name." "Nithara." She moved closer, kneeling beside his pallet with a vessel of water. "And you shouldn't thank me yet. The storms will last 3 more days. You cannot leave until then." As she helped him drink, Cale studied her properly for the first time. Her silver skin seemed to shift with subtle iridescence, like oil on water. The patterns across her arms and face were mesmerizing, intricate lines and dots that pulsed gently with her heartbeat. When their eyes met, he felt something stir in his chest, something beyond gratitude. "I'm Kale," he offered. "And 3 days trapped with you doesn't sound like a punishment." The patterns on her skin flared brighter for just a moment, and he could have sworn he saw the hint of a smile. "You should rest more. Your injuries." A sound cut her off. Low, guttural, and hungry. Nithara's expression transformed instantly, those luminous eyes going wide with fear. "No," she breathed. "They never come this close to the settlements." "What?" Kale tried to sit up, ignoring the protest from his ribs. "Blade spine hunters. The storm must have driven them from their territory." She was already moving, grabbing what looked like a crystalline spear from a rack near the entrance. "Stay down. Don't make noise." But the creature was already forcing its way through the dwelling's entrance, a nightmare of chitinous armor and serrated appendages, its spine lined with barbs that dripped with venom. It filled the chamber with its bulk, eyeless head swinging as it tracked movement through heat and vibration. Nithara positioned herself between it and Kale, spear raised. The hunter lunged. Everything happened too fast. Nithara dodged, striking at the creature's flank, but it was impossibly quick. Its tail whipped around, those toxic barbs aimed straight at her exposed back. Kale moved without thinking. Pain exploded through his barely healed body as he threw himself forward, slamming into Nithara and sending them both tumbling aside. He felt the barbs pierce his shoulder and chest, 3 of them sinking deep. Fire spread through his veins instantly. "Kale!" Nithara's scream seemed to come from very far away. He hit the ground hard, vision already graying at the edges. Through the haze, he saw Nithara move with terrifying grace, driving her spear through the hunter's throat with a cry of rage. The creature thrashed, then went still. She was beside him in an instant, her hands hovering over the barbs still embedded in his flesh. "No, no, no," she whispered, and those constellation marks were blazing now, pulsing frantically. "Why would you do that? Why?" "Couldn't let it hurt you," Kale managed, though each word was agony. The venom was liquid fire in his blood, and he could feel his heart stuttering, trying to keep beating against the toxin's assault. Tears traced silver paths down Nithara's face. "You're dying." "The venom, there's no cure, no time," her voice broke. Kale tried to reach for her hand, wanting to comfort her somehow, but his arm wouldn't respond. The grey was creeping in from all sides now, and with it came a strange cold that seemed to originate from deep within his bones. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "No." Nithara's voice turned fierce. She pulled him into her lap, cradling his head against her chest. Her hands pressed flat against his temples, and those patterns on her skin began to glow so brightly that they hurt to look at. "I won't let you die for saving me. I won't." Kale felt her heartbeat against his cheek, rapid and desperate. Then she began to speak in her native tongue, words that seemed to resonate in his very bones, ancient and powerful. The air around them shimmered, taking on a silver-blue luminescence. "Forgive me," she breathed in his language, then pressed her forehead to his. "This is forbidden, but I choose you. I choose this." Energy surged between them, not painful, but overwhelming. Kale felt something fundamental shift inside him, as if invisible threads were being woven through his very soul, connecting to something warm and bright and desperately afraid. Nithara's life force, he realized dimly. She was giving him part of herself. The venom's grip began to loosen. His stuttering heart steadied, beating in rhythm with hers. The cold retreated, replaced by a warmth that felt like coming home. And then everything went dark, but this time the darkness felt safe, cradled in arms that refused to let him go. Awakening to a new reality. Time passed in fragments. Kale drifted through fever dreams where silver light danced and he felt heartbeats that weren't his own. Sometimes he heard Nithara's voice, soft and worried, speaking words he couldn't quite grasp. Other times, he felt her presence like a flame nearby, steady and warm. When he finally clawed his way back to full consciousness, the first thing he noticed was that he felt different. Lighter somehow, yet more substantial at the same time. His body no longer screamed with pain. Instead, there was only a deep, bone-tired exhaustion. The second thing he noticed was Nithara. She sat slumped against the wall beside his pallet, her head tilted at an uncomfortable angle, clearly having fallen asleep while watching over him. But what made him catch his breath was how pale she looked. Her silver skin had lost much of its luster, appearing almost translucent in places, and the constellation patterns that had glowed so vibrantly now barely flickered with light. "Nithara." His voice came out as barely a whisper. Her eyes flew open immediately, those luminous orbs focusing on him with an intensity that made his chest tighten. "Kale." Relief flooded her features. 4 days. You've been unconscious for 4 days. He tried to sit up and found he could, though the movement was slow. As he did, something caught his eye, his reflection in the polished crystal surface across the room. There, on his own skin, were faint traces of constellation patterns. They marked his temples, his collarbone, everywhere Nithara's hands had touched him during the ritual. "What did you do?" he asked, though the question held no accusation, only wonder. Nithara rose on shaky legs, and he felt a spike of alarm that seemed to come from outside himself. She felt it too. He saw her eyes widen. "The soul thread binding," she said quietly, moving to sit on the edge of his pallet. "An ancient ritual, forbidden for nearly 1,000 cycles. I wove a part of my life essence into yours. It was the only way to fight the venom, to give your body the strength to heal." Kale reached out, taking her trembling hand. The moment their skin touched, sensation flooded him, her exhaustion, her fear, her overwhelming relief at seeing him awake. But beneath it all was something deeper, warmer. Something that felt like affection blooming into something more. "I can feel you," he breathed. "Your emotions. Your presence. And I can feel you." Nithara's fingers tightened around his. "We are bound now, Kale. Connected. Your heartbeat echoes in my chest. Your fear touches my mind. And mine yours." As if to demonstrate, she took a slow breath, and he felt his own lungs expand in sympathy. Their hearts beat in perfect synchronization. "Why is it forbidden?" Kale asked, though part of him already knew the answer. "Because my people believe we should not bind ourselves to outsiders. Because the Council fears what it means when two souls become one across the divide of species." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "And because there is a price." The fear that spiked through her in that moment transferred directly to him, making his stomach clench. "What price?" Nithara looked away, but he gently turned her face back to his. Up close, he could see the fine tremors running through her, the way her constellation marks struggled to maintain their glow. "The binding cannot be undone," she said. "Not without. Our life essences are intertwined now. If you choose to leave, if you reject the bond, my essence will fade. I will die within weeks." Horror crashed through Kale. "Nithara." "I knew the cost." Her voice was fierce now, and he felt her determination like steel in his own spine. "You were dying because you saved me. How could I do anything less?" Before he could respond, a sound echoed through the dwelling, a deep, resonant chime that seemed to come from the stone itself. Nithara went rigid, all color draining from her face. Through their bond, Kale felt her terror spike so sharply it made him gasp. "They know," she whispered. "The Watchers in the outer settlements. They must have sensed the ritual. The Council is sending enforcers." "What does that mean?" She stood abruptly, already moving to gather supplies with frantic energy. "It means we have to run. Now. They'll try to separate us, to break the bond," her voice caught. "They don't care that it will kill me. To them, I've committed the greatest blasphemy." Kale forced himself to his feet, surprised to find that despite his exhaustion, his body responded well. The bond, he realized. She was lending him strength even now, though she had so little to spare. "Then we run together," he said firmly, pulling her close. Through their connection, he poured every ounce of his determination, his gratitude, and the growing feelings he didn't yet have words for into her. Nithara looked up at him, and for a moment, her constellation marks flared bright again. "You would defy the Council? Risk everything?" Kale pressed his forehead to hers, mimicking the gesture she'd made during the ritual. "You gave me your life. The least I can do is help you protect it. Flight through crystal valleys. They fled into the storm-washed dawn, Velora's twin suns barely visible through lingering clouds. Nithara led them along paths only she knew, narrow trails between towering crystal formations that hummed with residual energy from the storms. Every so often, Kale felt a pulse of anxiety through their bond and knew she'd sense pursuit drawing closer. There's a network of abandoned mining tunnels in the Singing Valleys, she explained as they climbed a steep embankment, her breathing labored. If we can reach them before the enforcers catch up, we might lose them in the maze. Kale steadied her when she stumbled, feeling her exhaustion as if it were his own, which, in a way, it was. The bond had grown stronger over the hours, their awareness of each other deepening with every shared glance and touch. He could sense her thoughts now, not as words but as impressions and emotions that painted pictures in his mind. She was terrified. Not for herself, but for him. "I won't let them take you," he said softly, and meant it with everything in him. Nithara's hand found his, their fingers intertwining naturally. "The enforcers are trained warriors. We're a wounded pilot and a weakened healer. We can't fight them. Then we outsmart them." They pressed on through landscapes that took Kale's breath away despite their desperate circumstances. Crystal bridges spanned vast chasms, singing with haunting melodies when the wind passed through them. Fields of luminescent flowers bloomed in the valleys, their petals tracking the movement of the suns. It would have been paradise under different circumstances. As night fell, they took shelter in one of the abandoned mines Nithara had mentioned. The tunnel entrance was nearly hidden behind a waterfall of liquid crystal, a natural formation that flowed like water but hardened when touched. They passed through carefully, and once inside, Nithara collapsed against the wall. "Rest," Kale urged, spreading out the bedroll they'd salvaged from her dwelling. "I'll keep watch." "You need rest too." But even as she protested, he felt her gratitude washing through the bond. "I can feel that you're at your limit," he said gently. "Please, Nithara, let me take care of you for once." She studied him in the dim light provided by phosphorescent fungi growing along the tunnel walls. Then, slowly, she nodded and lay down. Kale settled beside her, and without discussion, she curled into his side, her head resting on his shoulder. The intimacy of it should have felt strange. They'd known each other less than a week, but the bond made it feel natural. Right. As if they'd been made to fit together this way. "Tell me about your world," Nithara murmured, her fingers tracing idle patterns on his chest. "Earth, you called it." So Kale spoke of blue oceans and green forests, of cities that touched the clouds and deserts that stretched beyond sight. He told her about rain that nourished instead of destroyed, about seasons that changed the landscape like magic. And as he spoke, he felt her wonder and longing flowing back to him. "It sounds beautiful," she whispered. "Nothing like Velora." "Velora is beautiful too. Harsh, but beautiful." He stroked her hair, marveling at its silk-like texture. "Besides, beauty isn't about the place. It's about who you're with." Nithara tilted her head up to look at him, and in the fungal glow, her constellation patterns pulsed with something that felt like hope mixed with desire. "Kale." He cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing across her cheek. "I know we didn't choose this bond. Not really. You did it to save me. But I want you to know, if I had the choice now, knowing everything, I would choose it. I would choose you." Her breath hitched. Through the bond, he felt the surge of her emotions. Joy, fear, relief, and something deeper that made his heart race in response. Then she was kissing him, her lips soft and tentative at first, then growing more certain. The kiss was unlike anything Kale had experienced. It wasn't just physical. Through their bond, he felt what she felt, the electric thrill racing down her spine, the way her heart soared. And she felt him too, the heat pooling in his chest, the desperate need to hold her closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nithara's constellation marks were blazing bright again, pulsing in rhythm with his own faint patterns. "The bond," she whispered, wonder in her voice. When our emotions align like that, it strengthens the connection." "Then we should probably do that more often," Kale said with a small smile, pulling her back down beside him. She laughed, the first real laugh he'd heard from her, and the sound was like music. They lay together in the darkness, hands entwined, heartbeats synchronized, knowing that dawn would bring new dangers but choosing to find peace in this moment. "Whatever comes," Nithara said softly, "I'm grateful it brought me you." Kale pressed a kiss to her forehead, feeling the truth of his next words resonate through their very souls. "We're going to survive this. Together. I promise." Neither of them slept much that night, too aware of each other's presence, too filled with the strange new reality of being two souls sharing one bond. But when dawn came and they had to move again, they rose as one, ready to face whatever the council would throw at them. Because some bonds, once forged, were stronger than any law. Standing against the storm. They almost made it to the outer territories before the enforcers found them. The Edge of Echoes was aptly named, a vast plateau where the wind created haunting harmonies through natural rock formations. Beyond it lay the wilderness, lands unclaimed by the council where they might find sanctuary. They were mere kilometers away when the enforcers emerged from behind crystalline pillars, 6 warriors in ceremonial armor that gleamed like midnight. "Nithara of the Silver Valley," the lead enforcer called, her voice amplified by a resonator device. "You are summoned before the council to answer for the crime of forbidden binding. Surrender, and the human will be spared." Kale felt Nithara's spike of fear, but also her fierce protectiveness. She stepped forward, placing herself between him and the enforcers. "You know I cannot surrender. The bond cannot be broken without killing me." "Then you have chosen your fate." The enforcer's expression was cold. "The council has deemed this acceptable. Better one heretic die than allow corruption of our sacred traditions." Rage flooded through Kale, his own and Nithara's intermingled until he couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. "She saved my life," he shouted, moving to stand beside her. "Is that your sacred tradition? Punishing compassion? You do not understand our ways, human. Then help me understand." Kale's voice rang across the plateau. "Explain to me how love is a crime. Explain how connection between souls is corruption. Because where I come from, we celebrate when two people find something worth fighting for." He felt Nithara's hand slip into his, felt her drawing strength from his words. Through their bond, an idea formed, not from him or her, but from both simultaneously. They could speak without words now, their thoughts flowing together like streams merging into a river. "We won't run anymore," Nithara announced, her voice steady despite the exhaustion Kale could feel dragging at her. "If the council wants to judge us, then let them come here. Let them face us together." The enforcers exchanged uncertain glances. This wasn't protocol. But before they could respond, the air shimmered, and 3 figures materialized on the plateau. Council elders, projected through advanced holographic technology. "Unprecedented," the central elder said, her ancient face carved with 1,000 constellation patterns. "A human speaking in defense of our ways. A daughter of Velora willing to die for an outsider." "Not an outsider," Nithara said firmly. "My bondmate. My choice." The elder's gaze swept over them both, lingering on the matching constellation patterns that now adorned Kale's skin. "The soul thread binding has not been performed in a millennium. We forbade it because it ties our people's fate to those who cannot understand our culture, our needs." "But I want to understand," Kale said, and through the bond, he let Nithara feel the absolute truth of his words. "Teach me. Let me prove that connection between worlds isn't weakness, it's strength." "And what of your world, human? Your people? Would they accept her as you accept them?" Kale thought of Earth, of humanity's complicated history with the unknown. He wouldn't lie. "Some would fear her. Some would hate. But others would see what I see, someone brave, compassionate, and worth crossing galaxies for." Silence fell across the plateau. Through their bond, Kale felt Nithara's heart hammering, felt her hope and terror warring. He squeezed her hand, and she squeezed back. Finally, the elder spoke. "The enforcers reported unusual readings during your flight. The bond between you grows stronger, not weaker. This has never been documented." "Because no one gave it a chance," Nithara said quietly. "You forbade it out of fear, but fear of what? That we might find common ground with other worlds?" That love might prove more powerful than tradition. Another elder leaned forward. Love, she says. After merely days. I've felt his soul, Nithara replied. I carry part of his essence within me. I know his courage, his kindness, his willingness to sacrifice. How many of our people can claim to know their partners so completely? The elders conferred silently. Kale felt the moment stretching, felt Nithara's fear crescendoing. Then he felt something else, a subtle shift in the air, in the enforcers' stances. They were lowering their weapons. Your bond challenges everything we believed about the soul thread ritual, the elder finally said. Perhaps we were wrong to forbid what we did not understand. She paused. We will grant you sanctuary, provisional acceptance of your bond. But you must agree to let us study this connection, to help us understand what you have created. Relief crashed through both of them so powerfully that Kale's knees nearly buckled. Nithara caught him, and he caught her, and they held each other as tears streamed down her face. Thank you, Nithara whispered. Thank you. The elders' projections faded, and the enforcers departed silently. Suddenly, Kale and Nithara were alone on the plateau with nothing but wind and echoes in each other. It's over, Kale said, hardly daring to believe it. No. Nithara pulled back to look at him, her constellation patterns blazing with joy and determination. It's just beginning. A new life. A new path. Together. She kissed him then, pouring 4 days of fear and hope and desperate longing into it. Kale responded with everything he had, their bond flaring so brightly that anyone watching would have seen 2 figures outlined in silver-blue light, 2 hearts beating as one. When they finally broke apart, both smiling through tears, Nithara touched her forehead to his, that sacred gesture she'd first made during the ritual. My bondmate, she whispered. My choice. My love. Always, Kale promised, knowing she could feel the truth of it resonating through their joined souls. In this world or any other. Always. They stood together as Velora's twin suns painted the sky in shades of purple and gold, 2 beings from different worlds bound by a connection that had defied death, tradition, and fear. The path ahead would be complicated, teaching the council about their bond, building bridges between their peoples, learning to navigate a connection that made them vulnerable to each other's pain as much as joy. But as Nithara laced her fingers through his and they began the walk back toward civilization together, Kale knew one thing with absolute certainty: some bonds were worth any cost. And he would spend the rest of his life proving that their connection, born from mercy, strengthened by sacrifice, and sealed with love, was one of them. Behind them, the edge of echoes sang its haunting melody, as if the very stones were celebrating this new chapter in Velora's history. And perhaps, in their own way, they were.